Hi, I'm Rob, and here we're going to look at Ebean's database migration feature. Now, before I start, there's two things I need to clarify. So firstly, there's two different types of DDL generation in Ebean. Ebean supports generating sort of create all and drop all scripts, and these are typically used in testing. So when we run all the tests, we want to drop and recreate all the tables and then run the tests. The second type of DDL generation is what we're looking at here, which is DB migration, which is about generating database schema diffs or database schema changes. So these are things like alter table, add column, things like that. So these are changes to an existing schema, like for example production, and these migrations are typically run using FlyawayDB or Liquibase, and now Ebean has its own migration runner as well. So there's those two different types of DDL generation, and they've got different purposes, and they're both important. The second thing I need to clarify is that when we're running our generate migration, Ebean is starting up in offline mode. So what that means is that we're going to generate migrations for our target database, which is Postgres, but we actually don't need to connect to Postgres to run these or to generate these migrations. So we don't need a Postgres database at all to generate the migrations. So here we're just running or generating the migrations using our main method. And for us, this main method is in test Java main DB migration. So with that, let's get into it. So let's generate our initial migration. Let's give it a version number of 1.0 and a name of initial. And then let's run that. So what this is going to do is, see here, we've got a generate v1.0 initial. And if we looked at main resources DB migration, we will see a model XML file and a SQL script. So the SQL script has got the DDL for creating all the tables, for example, and adding indexes, etc. And in the model, we've got the logical change, which is in this case creating tables, etc. Now, the next thing we'll do is we'll change our model and we'll run another migration. So what we'll do is we'll go to an entity and we'll add a couple of foo properties. And if we go to our main migration, let's give it another version number. Let's say version 1.1 and version name of add foos. So if we run this again, what this will do is it will generate another migration. So 1.1 add foos. So now we've got another DDL script, and this has got alter table add column. And if we look at our model, we've got a second model here which says the logical change is to add columns to this table and adding these columns. So that's all pretty good. Now let's do something a little bit more interesting. Let's go back to customer and let's add some bar columns, and maybe let's get rid of one of these columns. We no longer need fooey. So if we go to our migration, we can go add bars. Now if we leave off the version number, Ebean will figure out what the next version number is. So here we've generated a migration, add bars. Now if we look in our DDL, we've got our alter table add columns, but we don't have our drop column. And if we look in the change here, the migration XML, we've got our apply change set, which is adding columns, and we've got a change set which says pending drops. Now, basically what's happening here is that things that are drops or destructive changes, like drop column, drop table, those are held back and marked as pending changes. We can't apply these changes immediately because typically we're in a clustered environment. So we need to make sure that the changes are applied across all the nodes before we can apply destructive changes. So changes are held back. Now let's keep moving on. Let's add Bazzy and remove Burry. So let's go in here, add Baz. It's a Baz. Okay, run that. So we've generated another migration. What we've now got is another message here saying pending unapplied drops in version 1.2. And what this is telling us is that there are unapplied drops that were in this version that haven't been part of the migration yet. They're pending. Now, if we looked at 1.3, we've got another pending drop as well. Pending drops of Bari. So if we ran our migration again, we'll actually get pending drops in both 1.2 and 1.3. So let's have a look at that. If we go to our migration and say, blah, and run it again, we haven't actually made any changes. So it says, oh, no changes detected. But our pending unapplied drops has now got two versions in it, 1.2 and 1.3. So we've got drops in both of those versions that have not been applied. Now, if we want some drops we don't want to ever apply, for example, let's say some drops we might apply very quickly, minutes or hours, and some we might hold back for weeks or months, and then some we might never want to apply. If we've got a drop we never want to apply, we put in a suppress drops forever. So this is version 1.3, and I'm saying actually this drop will never actually apply. So when we run our migration, we've still got no pending changes, but we've got unapplied pending drops now just in 1.2. So that's how you use the suppress drops forever. And the next thing I want to do is actually apply one of these drops. So there's a second mode for using generating a migration, which is when we generate the next migration as the pending drops from a previous version. So here we're going to say, let's take the drops from 1.2 and we'll generate the next migration as those drops, which was the single column. And we didn't give it a name, so it just gave it a name of drops for 1.2. So now the 1.4 change migration says apply drops for 1.2, and this is the drop column, and our DDL is now alter table drop column. So when we run this 1.4 migration, it will actually drop the column. So that's pretty much how we go about running migrations. And now we've got, for example, 5 migrations that we could run. Now, if we were using FlyawayDB, then when we deploy our application, FlyawayDB would read these DDL changes as migrations and would apply them. And we can also do the same now with Ebean. So if we look in our properties file, I've got these 3 extra properties in Ebean properties, which is Ebean migration run equals true, and optionally I've got another username and password. Now, if your database tables are owned by the same user as the application, then you wouldn't need this username and password. But if your database tables are owned by a different user than your application database user, then, for example, this is effectively the owner of the tables, and this is the user of our application. Not sure if I've explained that very well, but we'll rock on. So now I could actually apply these changes. In Ebean, we can just start our application with that. And here I've got a special property which says ignore the test ebean.properties, because test ebean.properties will say use H2, don't run migration. But if I run that, this will start Ebean, and Ebean will detect that there's migrations that need to be run, and it will run them. So it's going to say running migration 1.0, 1.1, exactly. And there's some other bits in here. It's actually saying that's also inserting into this table called DB migration. If we look in our database table now, database schema. So we've got our database tables, and we've also got the special table called DB migration. And in here we've got our migration versions, comments, checksum, etc. So if we ran our application again, we would see that it wouldn't apply any migrations because they've already been applied. Local migrations 5, existing migrations 5, done. Okay, so that's it. There is something that I should explain quickly. This migration has been run with this V prefix here, and that's because I had ebean migration apply prefix V. This makes this version migration compatible with FlyawayDB, and more specifically, if you're using version migrations and repeatable migrations, you need the V prefix. If we didn't have this, ebean would generate the migrations without the V. I should quickly just do that. So if you're not bored, let's start again. Bang. If I go back here, this is quick forward reverse. Actually, it's just run the first one. Oh, let's change that. We didn't give it a version or a name, but ebean will throw out a name for us automatically. Call it initial and 1.1. That's got some columns in it. Let's add a column, remove a column, another column. What the heck? Run another migration. Let's give it a name. Add stuff. Right. So you can see here that the version, the migration scripts don't have the V prefix. So it's 1.0, 1.1. This is fine as long as we don't want repeatable migrations as well. In which case, ebean can handle this, but FlyawayDB cannot handle it. It needs the V. All right, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover. There will be another video talking about repeatable migrations and database views and basing entities on database views. So that's interesting for migrations, and a follow-up here. Cheers, thank you. Bye-bye.